when it comes down to nutrition, are there any supplements that you believe actually give an advantage to the athletes, are there some supplements that you think are purely hype that don't work at all, or actually are detrimental?
Yeah, no, I would say detrimental supplements will help you, but people have to understand supplements are only like a few percentage on what you do. Your calorie intake should be coming from your food. If you can't eat enough because you're so busy and it's not always easy and parents are cooking for you, then definitely you can supplement and add some more. And you get to a point it's kind of almost needed. Supplements for me, ones that work out the most. Well, number one for any athletes is creatine. Creatine, and I hate because there's so many bad myths out there. So many people look. Creatine is the
Yeah.
safest supplements and the most beneficial ones you'll find by everything. If you look, and it's the most studied, right there alone, you know that the facts are there, and the facts all showing there's nothing like a like creatine. So that's the number one. And whether it's Dr. Bob's, who's the lead doctor for Team Canada basketball, he's well renowned in Canada and across the world. He will say it's creatine. If you look at any like leading in the industry, will say creatine is number one in terms of supplementation. That's my number one. My number two for me will be vitamin D, especially in Canada where we lose so much sun exposure. So if you can implement your vitamin D, your immune system will be better, your energy output will be better, and you'll just feel overall better. Your health will improve. And it's baffling. They did a study with Brazil soccer players, and we're like Brazils have suns year round, and it's beautiful. And what they found is with pro soccer players in Brazil don't get enough sun exposure because a lot of the training is taking place inside. So even in the summer, if you work inside, you're an athlete, you work inside, you work out inside, you skate inside, you're not that exposed to sun, so you need that extra vitamin D. But us in Canada, obviously in winter, we need that vitamin D to keep our immune system high, our mental health high and healthy. We need that vitamin D. And then the other one you can add on there would be whey protein. Also, there's other vitamins. There's tons you can add, but whey protein for a lot of those younger athletes that probably don't consume enough protein or not enough calories. Another study was done on soccer players in the UK for youth soccer players, high school age, 15 to 18, and their calorie consumptions needed to be able to play at their best was anywhere from 3,000 and 4,000 calories. Most athletes don't even get that. And hockey requires even more calorie intake than soccer players because of our gear, the level of energy expenditure through the training, the practices, and the games. Our calorie intake should be almost at 4,000 calories for those guys as they're growing and everything going on. So protein becomes a little handy because it's easier to consume. It's a liquid calorie, especially if you use a mass gainer. But be aware, mass gainers sometimes are filled with fillers, which are really bad for you. So make sure you have a clean one if athletes decide to consume mass gainers. But mass gainers are definitely easier to get some calories in you if you don't eat enough as it is. And most of us just don't eat enough. Or most athletes, don't eat enough as it is. So get those calories in if you want to maximize and be able to recover and adapt.
What's the most overused but least necessary supplement that you see?
Probably pre-workouts and BCAAs. Yeah. Too many athletes will try to use pre-workouts to kind of cancel all the fatigue that they've built because they don't sleep enough. They don't prioritize sleep, so they'll focus more on the pre-workouts. They'll have like 1 to 2 scoops and just not sleep well enough. So pre-workout is definitely one I would say. And it's a vicious cycle too. If you take a pre-workout, especially if you take it late, like caffeine as a lifeline or life length of 6 hours. So if you take a pre-workout because your workout's at 8 o'clock at night, 6 hours later, that's when the feeling of the caffeine will actually finally wear off. You might not feel in your body, but your brain's still wired from the caffeine. So now you're not sleeping well. So guess what? The next day you'll need more caffeine, and it keeps being like that. So I would say probably like the most overused is that one would be your pre-workout. Sometimes guys would be a bit more careful of it. The other one would be BCAAs. It's a big one where it has its advantage. It tastes good, which is great. but it's not something that necessarily needed. But if the guys want, by no means, like, don't stop taking it. But if you want to save some money, don't necessarily take your BCAAs or glutamine. Glutamine, it's a branch amino acids. It's only so good. It's not going to do that much. So, and there's not as much results on data, but it's not as beneficial as people may think. So there's so many things that people are going to go and buy more, and so that's great. You're better off getting just a multivitamin supplement and focus on that. And the other one too, I totally forgot to mention that, if you don't consume enough fruits and vegetables, or your quality of food is not good, especially with all the processed food you find these days, maybe look at getting some greens in supplementation. It's easy to take now than more than ever. Like, there's tons of good flavors you can get, and it will help you get all of those minerals and vitamins that you don't necessarily get from your food, because we all know food is so processed these days, and not everybody can afford to buy organic and directly from the farm. So if you don't have the chance, so to minimize the effect of the bad food and the lack of minerals and vitamin intake, a green supplement would be a good one to add to your diet.
When it comes down to creatine, what kind of creatine? Because there's monohydrate, there's so many different types of creatine. So which one is most efficient, or does it even matter?
It does matter, actually. One, your body will respond differently, but the best right now and the most studied of all is the monohydrated one. Okay. And it is proven to be the best out there. That, and another one you can look at, a few brands are doing well for that. It's looking just a pure creatine. So if you know monohydrate doesn't do so well with me, you just look at just a pure creatine. PVL does really well. 6 Stars as well. I believe BioSteel does extremely well as well with that. So those are the things you might want to look at, is either pure or monohydrate. Okay. Are the best two to go. But in terms of study, monohydrate is the most studied one out there.
And is there a certain amount of creatine that people should take per day, or does it depend on your weight or your age or anything like that?
It all depends on a few other factors in reality. Depends on where you are in your training. The other thing too is people understand that creatine is being produced in your body naturally. So if you tend to take too much of it and don't necessarily wave, your natural ability to produce it will reduce, because your body will just account for everything that comes in. So what I tell my athletes, always wave it out. But waving out doesn't mean you necessarily need to go to zero. You can just improve on it. And the nice thing with creatine is, if you take too much, guess what? You're just going to pee in it. You're not going to actually keep it in. It's not going to cause any side effect or anything. Too much of it is not a bad thing, because you're not going to keep it in. You're just going to eliminate it through your pee. So it's not a problem. And there's studies were done on its ability. So anywhere from 5 to 10 grams a day is really good. If you're going to be in a phase where you're really in high demand, creatine boosts your recovery and adaptation. So if you know you're getting a little tired, maybe increase your calorie intake because your body's not recovering as well. Then you also got to look at whether or not you're sleeping well. But that's another thing that can help, is creatine will speed up your recovery. Creatine will also bring in more nutrients to your muscles. So while you're lifting, if you're in a power phase, you want to build more power, or in the strength phase, creatine will actually help you generate more power and force while lifting. So in that case, you may want to take more as well, or your timing becomes an issue. So if you're doing power and strength, maybe take more before your lift, so you have more during the workout. So maybe have some during the workout as well. Whereas if you're doing a size or hypertrophy strength, or a hypertrophy phase, then the recovery is more crucial. So you might want to have more. So like at times, so the timing of the creatine now becomes in question as well. And another study was shown on concussions, and it showed that the 7 days following your concussion, if you increase your creatine intake by 20 grams, which the average is 5 to 10 grams daily. So if you double that to 20 grams a day, your baseline recovery from your concussion will actually improve quicker. So you'll be back to baseline quicker. And for some studies, they even found that some athletes were doing better than their previous baseline prior to that concussion. So creatine is so beneficial in so many ways, and it even helps with the brain. So for those guys that come back from a concussion, then creatine is in there. But in terms of intake, I would say if you take 5 grams every day, you're getting something. Just fluctuate through and look at your workout too. Like if you're gonna go for a big power workout, maybe take 10 before, or at least 5. And if you know you're in a part of your training where it is so demanding, you're so depleted from it because the workouts are that intense, maybe increase to 15, 20 on that day just to help you recover quicker so you can bounce back quicker, especially if you're going to have a skate the next day and another workout, which most hockey players will have. Then increase a bit on your take. But the best way I tell everybody is wave it through on a daily basis. Go according to what you have. I know if I have just a mobility day, I don't need any. I'm not going to waste my time unless I'm still feeling depleted from the day before. Fine, I'm going to take maybe 5. But if not, I'm not going to take any. I don't need to. But if I know I have a day where maybe I have a big power day and then I might have a skate like that day, I might take 2, 3 scoops, which is about 5 gram scoops. I'll get to 15 grams in that day. So it's about waving it through the daily basis. I know a lot of people will wave it with seasons or so. I don't so many athletes, and I see it here in Lethbridge, they'll take creatine only in the off season, and because they're afraid of water redemption. It's like water redemption is not a bad thing. Okay, it's not the end of the world. Even if you do have redemption, it's okay. You're not going to be dehydrated. Creatine does not dehydrate you. That's one of the biggest fear. Like you don't get dehydrated because of creatine. Caffeine will dehydrate you, not creatine. Creatine is completely fine. So if you take your creatine, you're good. Take it year round. Don't just limit it to the in-season, the off-season. Keep it in-season as well. It's so beneficial for athletes to take, and that's the number one someone everybody should actually have in their house. And it's fairly cheap too. For like a 30 to 40 servings, it could be like anywhere from $15 to $25, which is super affordable. Whereas you look at BCAAs is anywhere from 30 to 50, and so on. So cheap, easy to get supplement, and it's highly efficient.